68. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We end today's show looking at the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Burma, where more than 400,000 members of the Rohingya Muslim minority have fled Burma after hundreds of their villages were burned to the ground. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has accused the Burmese government of waging a textbook example of ethnic cleansing. Hundreds of thousands of Rohingya have crossed the border into neighboring Bangladesh, which is struggling to shelter and feed the influx of refugees as it recovers from the worst monsoon season in decades. Floodwaters submerged about a third of the entire country of Bangladesh. This is Rohingya refugee Chaman Bahar speaking from a makeshift shelter in Bangladesh.
The military torched our houses. My husband, along with my daughter and her husband, were killed in the clashes. I somehow was able to flee, taking my grandson along with all these villagers.
Bangladesh says it's now preparing to construct shelters for 6,000 Rohingya children who've entered Bangladesh alone to escape violence in Burma. At the United Nations General Assembly last week, Bangladesh's leader laid out a plan to eventually repatriate Rohingya refugees, repatriate them back to Burma. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina said the UN should set up safe zones in Burma for returning refugees.
To see that the Myanmar authorities are laying landmines along their stretch of the border to prevent the Rohingyas from returning to Myanmar. These people must be able to return to their homeland in safety, security, and dignity.
In recent days, Bangladeshi authorities have sharply restricted the movements of Rohingya refugees, telling them they can't leave their makeshift camps, ordering drivers not to transport Rohingya and landlords not to rent to them. Most recently, the Bangladeshi government reportedly has banned its cell phone carriers from selling SIM cards to Rohingya refugees. For more, we're joined by Mohammed Yunus, the founder and managing director of Grameen Bank, recipient of the 2006 Nobel Peace Prize. He and over a dozen other Nobel Peace laureates have signed a letter calling on the United Nations Security Council to intervene to protect the Rohingya and end the humanitarian crisis in Burma. Mohammed Yunus has a new book. It's called A World of Three Zeros, the New Economics of Zero Poverty, Zero Unemployment, and Zero Net Carbon Emissions. Welcome to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
Let's start with the crisis of the Rohingya, and then I want to talk with you about climate change, about Bangladesh, a third of the country flooded, and about poverty, the issues that you've taken on for so long. But what is happening with the Rohingya?
It's an unbelievable situation. It's all this happening under the leadership of a Nobel Peace Prize winner.
You're referring to Aung San Suu Kyi, the de facto leader
of the nation.
So she's a sister Nobel Peace Prize winner.
Absolutely. We have been working together for many years. Suddenly we see a completely different face for her.
This is a woman who was imprisoned, either house arrest or jail, for 15 years by the very military she's now working with, that is responsible for the ethnic cleansing.
The whole world supported her. She stood for democracy. She stood for human rights. She stood for all the human values you can think about. Her speeches are full with all these values, upholding these values for her nation. And he suffered. She was in prison and under house arrest for many, many years. And now she comes to power, and we see completely different face from the Peace Nobel laureate. And she defends this in saying that we don't know why these Rohingyas are leaving this country. So there's so many reports coming, and you have reports from international press, media, and so on. And I have been inviting her to come to Bangladesh, see these people, and tell them that Myanmar is as much as their country as hers. And I have come to take you back to your
Myanmar, the name that the military has renamed Burma.
Yeah, the Burma. I'm taking you back to Burma. She doesn't do that. And you mentioned about 400,000 already coming in a very drastic circumstance, dead bodies floating on the border river, and all the atrocities that go on behind the whole thing that are coming. And UN estimate is by the end of the year it will exceed 1 million refugees coming from Burma. The whole estimate that is given by the government of Burma, that there's about 1 million Rohingyas in the country. So if you have 1 million coming to Bangladesh, what is left in you? So when people say it's ethnic cleansing, it's a perfect example of ethnic cleansing. Many government leaders like President Macron and others were saying this is genocide, a very clear case of genocide that is taking place. And the world has not taken a definitive step. They have condemned individually and so on. Still, UN Security Council, to whom we have appealed, please step in, do something so that people can go back to their own homes. And if it is delayed, it will become more complicated, and terrorism and other things will flourish in this region, and the whole stability of the region will be at risk.
If Aung San Suu Kyi said stop the ethnic cleansing, could she stop it alone? Would the military listen to her?
The role of the leadership is to be bold. Even if it's not happening right now, you stand for something. You don't just give in, say, okay, what can I do? Even that she's not saying. She doesn't say, what can I do? She simply says, I don't know where they are living. I didn't see anything wrong. So that's not a good kind of leadership. And then she's stopping all the foreign visitors, all the foreign observers to come in. She has not allowed any foreign visitors to come in. Even the media cannot go. So people have immediate reason to believe that something terribly wrong happening inside of Myanmar or Burma.
And what about Bangladesh's response?
Bangladesh has opened the border. They're coming in. Bangladesh don't have immediate resources to settle all those people, so we need international help. It's not a small number. It's a huge number. To give them shelter, to give them food, you need a structure to make it happen, and diseases and all the terrible things that they have come back with, medical problems that they have them inside of them. So these are the things that we have to address.
What can the UN Security Council or the UN General Assembly, what can the UN do?
You can do a lot of things. They have many, many ways to do that. They can give sanctions. They can send commissions to study the situation and come back. And luckily, the Annan Commission, Kofi Annan Commission, which was appointed by Aung San Suu Kyi's government, and most of the commission members are Burmese citizens. 6 of them are Burmese citizens, 3 of them are outsiders, including Kofi Annan. They made a recommendation of the commission report, and a very elaborate recommendation. And all we are saying, now that you accepted those recommendations, officially they have accepted, go ahead and implement it, and have an international body to supervise and help you implement that. So this is not something we are saying which is not accepted by them. They have accepted it, but they don't do anything about it. They just say that we have created an implementation committee, which is their own people at the leadership positions in the government, which people are not very sure whether they will move in the direction of implementation of those recommendations.